5, 4, 3. And we are back, folks, here on the Michigan Insider, Sports Talk 1050, WTKA, online at WTKA.com. Look at that. That's my Lions. That's right. Now we're going to talk Michigan. That's my Lions. It starts today. It starts today. The march back to the playoffs. How you guys doing this morning?
You're delusional. You're delusional.
How am I delusional? Have you seen this team? Come on, man. You got Amara St. Brown. I mean, Aiden Hutchinson is ready to take a step up. You guys got me on this?
I'm a Lions fan. I'm a newly minted Lions fan, I admit.
I still understand why you did this to yourself.
I haven't suffered the way you've suffered, Sam. But I think you're a little premature on Lions to the playoffs.
I am on cloud nine, because think about this. In my lifetime, in your lifetime, Brian, in your lifetime, Seth, not quite. I think you kind of go a little back a little farther.
I remember when the Lions demolished the Browns in 1957 and won the championship. I remember that.
So old, he remembers a Lions championship.
Right.
I am. I've saw. You know.
So in my lifetime, Michigan and the Lions haven't had, these kinds of expectations simultaneously. I've never lived in a moment like this. The closest was maybe the early 90s, but that's not like this. So allow me to bask in the glow of optimism, at least for a moment. All right.
So it's legit. It's legit.
Sam, who's got the better quarterback?
Am I on the wrong show?
The Lions of Michigan? Right now, hey man, Jared Goff disrespect is gonna stop today. This year it's gonna stop. All right, let's get to talking some Michigan. As the Wolverines began the season last week, came out, beat East Carolina 30-3. You guys have message boards. You're on Twitter. While satisfied with the victory, Brian Cook, a lot of fans lamented some stats. They lamented the lack of gaudy rushing stats. They lamented the no sacks in the game. Down a little bit on kicking. You know how it is. 30-3 it didn't look quite impressive enough. Does that sum up your feeling, or what did you think coming out of that game last week?
Well, I mean, from an offensive perspective, they had the first drive backed up on their own one. And then until the backups came in, they scored touchdowns on every possession except for a 1-minute drill at the end of the second half. And then they got a little bit too obvious on the Edwards drive where they were trying to get him a touchdown. So for the overall impact, I thought was good. And then I'm looking at the film, and one, ECU's defense is interesting. Like, so they run that tight 404 tight thing that a lot of small schools do, and they're stunting all over the place. I don't think I saw a bust for them all day. And that's really impressive because they are replacing a ton of personnel, and they were incredibly aggressive. So their safeties, I don't think I saw them line up deeper than 10 yards all day. And they were frequently throwing guys across the line of scrimmage before the mesh point even happened. So I was going over this, and I was thinking about you talking last week about whether Michigan needs some RPOs. Yeah, they need some RPOs. But the costs were, when Michigan ran play action, there were only 3 guys in the coverage, right?
Right.
So, I mean, it was one of those games where like half your plays look brilliant and half your plays look incredibly bad because of the way the defense is playing. So, but they went away from just grinding it, and they ran a ton of play action like we were asking them to do. JJ looked amazing doing it, and I think they might have to just do this for 3 or 4 games. Where it's like, okay, if you're going to fling half your defense across the snap before even checking whether it's run or pass, well, we're going to start passing it.
I got a message from Michigan offense. The only gripe I have, you're allowed to run play action twice in a row. Because every time they ran play action, they nailed them, right? There's like 3 guys out there. They get 0 coverage, and and JJ looks a guy off if he has to, but normally it's just open, just there for him. And then the next play, I checked every single play after play action. And they run blitz and we run. So that was the only, and I know first time play caller and whatnot, but that was one of the reasons that was happening is just ECU was not going to go off of what they were doing. They did not learn their lessons at all. On defense, the reason there's no sacks is because it was the opposite of their defense. Their defense was super aggressive. Their offense was either throw the ball like on a fade really quickly, which that gets out before the pass rush can get there. You remember 2020 Michigan State, right? Or they just throw it underneath the coverage. But unless they had to, they were not going to drop back and try to fire a ball into a pattern. When they did, if they got any kind of pressure at all, the quarterback just threw it away. Or, they were big mobile quarterbacks. They would start running a little bit and then have to turf it. They tried to throw into coverage one time after they got pressure, and that was the St. Russell interception. And they didn't try it all game. They knew they were going to lose, and they were just like, let's get out of this thing alive.
Yeah, even though they had no sacks, they did get some pressure, and the one led to an interception. You had 78 was that coming down
Brant.
on the quarter. Yeah, yeah.
God's gift Brant.
Yeah, he had a good game, and in fact, I think he was almost 86 on Pro Football Focus, and he caused that interception. Although Sanders still did a great job on that. And there was another play where Jenkins was chasing the quarterback all over the field, where he finally just threw it away. So there was some pressure, and to the extent we didn't get sacks, a lot of it was they were getting the ball out fast. And as Seth said, it was a very passive passing game. On the running stats, yeah, I mean, I suspect we're going to see this all year. I mean, I don't know what you guys think, but I think you're going to see other teams be very aggressive with their linebackers and safeties and come down with their safeties. And so Michigan should be running a lot of play action. I mean, and it worked in this game, and JJ looked really good and the receivers look good. I think one of the concerns we had coming in is there depth on the wide receivers? And it sure looked like it. I mean, Fred Moore had a couple nice catches. I think Clemens had a catch. They still have two guys injured. And of course, the primary two guys were really good. I thought Cornelius Johnson had a great game. Roman Wilson, 3 touchdowns, looked good. So, looked good. I wasn't disappointed at all, despite the running stats and despite the lack of sacks.
Yeah, well, I think the observation that Seth brought up, back-to-back play action, they could have racked up 400 passing yards easy in this game. I found myself kind of trying to get into the head of Kirk Campbell there, what his marching orders must have been. And I think even in the scenarios where they're loading the box, I think Michigan still wants to be able to run the ball. So they wanted to work that. We want to work on how we run into a loaded box. And so what I was most interested in was, did they adjust their running game? And they attempted to. In the second half, you could see that. And coming out of the break, Jason Avant said he talked to Jesse Minner, and Minner said, hey, we got to get our perimeter run game going. We got to get more outside zone. Right. And so that's what we were looking at in the first half. They were really closing down those inside gaps. Borges was like, hey, they need to get, remember we were talking about TCU, they need to get outside. This is like that all over again. They got to get outside. Sure enough, we come out of the break. That's exactly what Minner said. They start trying to work outside zone. It's hit or miss because they aren't a great outside zone team. But that's something that they need to continue to work on. How do you get your perimeter run game clicking when teams are slamming down on you inside? If you insist on trying to run the ball in those scenarios, and Michigan is going to insist on still trying to run the ball in some of those scenarios, maybe just not as much as they used to, Brian.
Well, I mean, I think two things. One is RPO. So once you have a steady RPO game, those linebackers can't fire like ECU linebackers were firing, because that's suicide. So, that's something that I think, to put the brakes on opposition players, give them some indecision, that's something they need to incorporate. And then, there was that, I'm pretty sure this was an intentional counterplay. They run basically what looks like a dive, but Edwards has an angle when he takes the ball that allows him to hop outside of a really aggressive defensive end. And he picks up 15, 16 yards just by getting to the edge. And we saw something like that last year where they basically ran what Borges calls bluff and we call arc without the quarterback. So it was basically a split zone, and the tight end just passed up the defensive end, and then Corum's angle took him outside. So there are ways to get this stuff going. Honestly, that sort of the speed option look where you go to a mesh point first and then get into a pitch relationship, that would kill these teams. Because when they run that dive, you are seeing 8, 9, 10, 11 players just crash into the middle of the line. So there are ways around it that don't necessarily involve you having to run outside zone when you got a line full of big maulers, and those are going to be chunk plays. Those are going to be 20 yards plus.
The point that you just made, I think, is the point. Yeah, outside zone was just one way, but figuring out what is our perimeter run game. Can we develop it enough that it is a consistent counter to what teams are trying to do to us? It took them to the second half to get to their outside run game against Purdue, and against TCU, and obviously that involved getting JJ involved, and they weren't going to do that in this game. So outside of getting JJ on the edge more, what are some of the other ways in which you should do it? There were no pin and pulls in this game. Understand that TCU, there was a lot of leakage against TCU on pin and pull plays with the way they were playing. So that was off the books. What are some of the other ways that you can get to the perimeter? I expect to see Michigan work on that. But how about this, Seth, as a theory? Brian brought up RPO. I brought up RPO. You could see examples in this game of the increased trust they have with JJ. Remember I said last week they're letting him change plays, change protections. He did it in this game. Got a big pass play, right? If they have that kind of trust in him pre-snap, if he's really been balling like they say he's been balling, if he's really in tune with Kirk Campbell the way he seems to be and the way they say he is, and he ran RPOs last year. I think it was the Hawaii game. He ran that split zone RPO for a touchdown. Yep. It's in the playbook. I suspect it's just like in the two, they're just holding it back. And it's the only thing that makes sense to me why we didn't really see it. It's in there, just like running JJ is in there, but they're just holding it back for down the line.
I think what they wanted to do
otherwise.
Yeah. So the question about how do they get to the edge, one of the plays that they did use was banana. I know there's a lot of different names out there for it. That's the one I know it as, but it's basically a waggle, right? And they got the ball to Bredesen. He got to rumble for a little bit. And if that guy comes up on Bredesen, then the quarterback can just run it. And that was a play that Harbaugh used a lot at Stanford. That's if you're not RPOing, because I think RPO is more expensive than people realize because it takes a lot of practice to get it right. You have to not just know who to read. You have to know who to read in all the different ways the defense can attack it, right? So you can put it in for one game plan and not another. I think for the first game of the season, RPOs are a little difficult to install because you don't know exactly what defense you're going to get. So if they come out in something new, you're reading the wrong guy and you burned all that practice time. I think what they wanted to do was use this game and use the next game and probably the next game after that to figure out to get JJ used to reading defenses in the past. It's stuff that he's going to build upon, right? And we saw a lot of that. I feel really smart when Devin Gardner and I noticed the same thing because I'm like, Devin's going to notice it. He's going to find it. So if I find the same thing, it's like I feel really good about myself. And we found the same play with this when he checked Colston Loveland on a third down, right? And he has Loveland be a blocker. He didn't do a good job of blocking in that play, but he noticed that the way they were set up, that ECU thought Michigan wants to go to Loveland on third down, so they used all their safety help on him, right? So he just made the blocker the guy that they had two men protecting. That guy instead, he's going to go and take off after Roman Wilson, and then he's gone. Then you have that throw underneath to Cornelius Johnson. He was doing a lot of that stuff. JJ was working on how to run the things that they run with all those little subtle things that make them work. And that was the game plan. That's what they wanted to do in this game. And that's what they accomplished in this game. So I'm not worried about the other stuff. We know Michigan's going to run the ball down the middle unless you completely put yourself out of position to take that away. That's still their identity. It's just
it shouldn't be their identity anymore. I mean, like, that was their identity last year, and their identity this year should not be that, because they don't have to do that. Their identity this year should be like, we're just going to do whatever you're not defending. Because with JJ at this level, he doesn't have to be protected. You know, he's not a guy who you have to like work around some limitations with. So I would like them to start, instead of imposing their will, just taking what the defense is giving you. Because if you are trying to play like ECU, yeah, JJ's going to put up 85% on you. So I don't want Michigan to do what they did last year, where certain key parts of their offense, what they were doing, they couldn't get to till after halftime. You know, JJ was running the ball last year against OSU and TCU, but he didn't get a design run until the third quarter. And to me, that's not what they should be doing this year. They should be going in, anticipating people, stopping their run game, and just beating their heads in for a half. And then maybe after halftime, you can, after they've decided that they don't want JJ to pass for 600 yards, then you can go back to being more ground and pound.
Well, that's sort of what happened this week, right? And, I'm not convinced that the Michigan coaching staff, for whatever reason, is comfortable with RPOs. I mean, we've been pretty RPO light, and for whatever reason, that just doesn't seem like the direction they want to go. It didn't look like it last year, and it didn't look like it Saturday. And they're comfortable with read options, but they don't want JJ running read options against teams they're going to beat anyway. And so that poses a bit of a problem, but I'm 100% with Brian. I mean, if teams are going to play cover 1 or cover 0, I mean, you have a quarterback, you got wide receivers, throw the damn ball.
See, I think RPO is going to be the compromise for what Brian is talking about. I mean, I happen to agree with Seth. I think, their identity, maybe it's not running in, up the middle into a loaded box, but they're going to still run the football in those situations. It's just who they are. Will it be an Achilles heel at the end of the day? We'll see. But they're going to still want to run the rock. When they're 8 or 9 men in the box, they just got to figure out how can they do that effectively. But to your point, Brian, to be able to adjust to how teams are playing, I think it's going to be okay. We're going to put some RPO on in these scenarios. And we know, because I suspect there are 2 reasons, Craig, and the biggest being, you call RPOs, whatever your concept of the run pass balance is going to be, you can't predict it. It's going to be thrown off. And I think going into the season last year, even after you build trust with JJ McCarthy, it's more, hey, we want to run the football a certain number of times a game. And you can't call, X number of RPOs and expect to get your run menu executed, right? Because a lot of those are definitely going to be passes. This year, I think the compromise is going to be, all right, we'll concede that. We're going to call some RPOs. It might mean it skew more toward the pass that way, but we'll use that to balance the equation. But we're still at the same time going to be calling some run plays, some pure run plays into loaded boxes. I think that's how they're going to split the baby, Brian.
Yeah, I mean, it's just you need to put indecision into the minds of the defense. And the only thing better than a linebacker who's charging across the line of scrimmage because he's got the wrong play is a linebacker who's not doing anything. Right? The guy who's standing still is the perfect defensive foil. So, Michigan last year, they weren't going to do that, except against Penn State, I guess. They were going to use those play actions as daggers for 60 yards. They wanted to grind down the field and then every once in a while hit a big play. And that's one philosophy of offense that I think is appropriate when you're being risk avoidant. But Michigan is at the point where they should be maximizing what they're able to do. And so that means not calling a lot of plays to set up another play. Like, you have so much ability on this offense that every play should, at least hypothetically, be a home run. And with Corum and Edwards, a lot of your run plays are going to be like that. You just gotta maybe move away from a really heavy duo for a little bit. It reminds me of a few years back when Michigan was running a bunch of crack sweeps, and there was a point at which it was clear that everybody who was defending Michigan had a plan to defend these crack sweeps, and they hung on to it for like a couple weeks too long. And now it might be the time to bring back the crack sweep.
Yeah, because teams are game plan, and we got to stop duo.
Yeah,
no question about it.
Yeah.
No question.
Yeah.
Like, that was ECU's whole game plan, and they did a pretty solid job of it. It was difficult to grade the offensive line in parts because it's like, okay, I mean, what is Trevor Keegan going to do when there's a guy, he's supposed to be on a double team, and there's a guy screaming through the gap?
Mhm.
Like that's just tough. Tough sledding for offensive linemen, and making their jobs easier, I think, will be profitable for both the run and the pass.
I mean, I think it's fair to say too, or to recognize that the ECU's strength, I thought, of that team was the defensive line. I thought they were pretty good.
Well, they were really
Secondary, I
tricky.
thought, was actually good.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I could see that defense being very good at the G5 level. Like, I just don't think that they have the horses to really stand up against a Power 5 offensive line. But as I mentioned, they ran a ton of fronts, they ran a ton of stunts, and I don't think I saw them bust once. Like, they had to really expose themselves on play action because they're so light. But when they're not playing Michigan, they might be good.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good. I mean, in some ways, it's a good team, and it's certainly a well-coached team. And I thought we mentioned that last week, that this guy, I think his name Mike Houston, had done a good job other places. The question for you guys is, what did you think of Miles Hinton at right tackle, and is that going to endure? I mean, I know that you're a Trente Jones fan, Brian, and sort of lean that way, but you looked at the offense. What did you think of Hinton this week?
I mean, I thought he was not good, which is an opinion shared by Miles Hinton. So yeah, he was at a press conference like, yeah, I didn't play like I practiced. So like, I feel fairly confident in saying that he was Michigan's weakest offensive lineman in this game. There were a number of instances where I don't think he quite read what ECU's defense was doing, and so he'd release to the second level where there was nobody to hit. So there were a couple of plays that I thought got jammed up because of that decision. He got beat on pass pro a couple of times. And yeah, I think you're going to see Henderson and Trente Jones start this weekend, and then that's where the baseline is for comparison, I think.
So Henderson, I don't think, did he get any snaps at all this week?
Yeah, he was a second
late
team left tackle. He got like 9 because the second team got on for 9 snaps.
And you think they're going to bench Barnhart this week in favor of Henderson?
I mean, Harbaugh said that they were going to change offensive tackles from week 1 to week 2.
Okay.
So Barnhart acquitted himself pretty well. Doesn't have the physical upside of Henderson, but sometimes you just want the steadiest guy, and he might be that guy.
I mean, I just love having Barnhart on this team as a 6th guy, because you can use him as a guard, you can use him as a tackle. Like, that's the ideal is that one of the other tackles comes through so that Barnhart can be your safety valve, because someone's going to get hurt this year.
Well, I mean, he would be that even if he is a starting tackle. I don't necessarily think that's a big distinction. I mean, Trente came in for maybe a dozen snaps as the bonus OL, and he thunked some guys across the formation really powerfully. So I would be surprised if he didn't play pretty well against UNLV, and I would be surprised if he didn't take that job. Although the way everybody's been talking about Barnhart, maybe if Henderson comes through on left tackle, that he's still the right tackle. But, yeah, I've been Team Jones here, and I didn't see a whole lot to change my opinion.
All right. We need to get to a break. We'll get to the Michigan defense on the other side, because some guys really, really flashed none more than Mikey Sainristel, who just looks like an absolute dude. But we got to get to a break. Come back on the other side, get to that. Hey, folks, home improvements. I mean, a lot of crazy weather here over the spring and summer. People have some projects that they still need to complete around the home. Chelsea Lumber is your one-stop shop, one of Michigan's oldest and largest lumber yards, serving customers for over 100 years. But in that time, they become so much more. Chelsea Lumber is where the home begins. Great products, great people, great prices, and great service. So whether you need lumber, roofing, tools, decks, doors, windows, paint, work clothes, everything in between, they got you covered over at Chelsea Lumber, up to and including design help, kitchen renos, bathroom renovation, pole barn builds, great design team on staff can take whatever you're looking to do, put it down, and even help you find a contractor to bring that design to life. That is the Chelsea Lumber difference, with 3 locations to serve you in Chelsea, Salina, and Bridgewater. You can find them online at chelsealumber.com. As we get to a break, you want to join us inside of... Where's my music?
Got a jam at Joe's garage.
All right. Then all you got to do is be caller number 7 at 734-998-1050. Caller number 7 at 734-998-1050. You'll join us inside the Bud Light Victor's Lounge. There we go. Now I can hear it. The great food courtesy of Dexter's Pub. Great drinks courtesy of Bud Light. All you got to do is come and bring the atmosphere. Just be caller number 7 at 734-998-1050. More MGoBlog Roundtable on the other side here on the Michigan Insider on Sports Talk 1050 WTK The Ticket.
Here on the radio.
I'm sorry. So you said it played, I just couldn't hear it. All right.
Yeah, I couldn't hear it either. That's why
Me neither.
I can't play the music over the stream for copyright reasons.
I gotcha. It makes sense. Okay, so all right, I knew this was going to come up. Will Fong reported that they are a factor for Bryce Underwood. That shouldn't come as a surprise, right? I think if he can win games, he's going to be a factor for everyone. All the top guys. So, is he going to Colorado? I think that's an overstatement. Is he gonna be a factor? I think so. He's already recruiting the state. He came in and got my man over at West Bloomfield, the defensive end. Sorry that his name is escaping me this early in the morning. So they do have a presence here in the state. Can't ignore 510 yards in the first game. That's why I'll come back to what we've been talking about. Any success that we see for JJ on and off the field needs to be front center. So he goes out, has a good, nearly perfect passing day. And then we're reading reports he has a deal with Bose and, deal with all these different deals that he's coming up with. It is important for those stories to be front and center because it helps when you're trying to recruit a dude like that. And now you're trying to recruit him not just against Brian Kelly and LSU, right? Now you're trying to recruit against Prime, which is going to be a compelling presence for a lot of kids. And I imagine that's going to be the case for Bryce. I'm actually going to be talking to some Belleville folks today about that very thing. So we'll see what they're saying. But it doesn't come as a surprise to me that he's going to factor in there. Coach Prime. So,
I apologize, by the way, about the audio. I thought about it after the fact, but I can't play certain things over the stream. We'll get in trouble. So, and that's all the viewers that are on the stream. I don't want to. The stream would be erased, basically, is what would happen, and we'd get in trouble. So, that's why I didn't hear it. But I did play it all the times that I said I played it. You just didn't hear it.
Meanwhile, the quarterback we do have in the fold has been playing very well. Jaden Davis. Yes. He's got 11 touchdowns in 3 games, 11 touchdown passes, no interceptions. He's averaging about, last time I checked, 380 yards a game and in passing and high yards per attempt. Extremely efficient passing. So I mean, he's not a stiff.
Right? It's almost like he's a football
unlike
player, not a
somebody
player,
else
right?
seems to think.
Look, and listen, and that's a great point to bring up.
Yeah,
we're talking about bringing in Bryce Underwood not as a shoe-in, bringing him in and having a competition. having a competition and may the best man win. The best man will win, and the other guy will transfer. That's how these things work these days. So, you know, we'll see.
I mean, that's probably for him not going to be different at Colorado.
Right. We'll have, you know, Jaden will have the benefit of a year in the system and likely a year starting at quarterback for Michigan. So you know, you can't just say he's guaranteed to lead. He's a damn good quarterback.
You think Jaden's
as he's
start
shown
next year, man?
Unless they go to the portal, yes. Unless they get a guy in the portal, which they're going to try
to get somebody, yeah.
But is, you know, unless can you get a sample? Did you say Milton?
Well, no, I mean for Bryce Underwood, for Bryce Underwood purposes, going to the portal makes sense. You get a 1-year stopgap, and then you get an open competition between hopefully Underwood and Jaden Davis. Like, you know.
Yeah, but as the roster stands right now, Seth, starting quarterback, and you know, you hope you can go find a Sam Hartman, but if you can't, then here you go.
Back on radio in about 20 seconds, guys.
Yeah. What did you guys think? I don't know if we'll have time to get to this. What did you think of freaking Ohio State? Like I asked you guys, they're real quiet about quarterback. They're real quiet about the offense. And it's like, I don't think they were just, you know, being humble. Like they're capable of being humble. I think they legit saw a problem.
Yeah. I mean, that left tackle is not up to their standard. And
he was radio, guys, in about 5 seconds. Stand by. Back on radio in 5, 4, 3.
And we are back, folks, here on the Michigan Insider, Sports Talk 1050 WTKA, online at WTK.com, MGoBlog Roundtable, Brian Cook, Seth Fisher, and the venerable Craig Ross, the only one among us who remembers the 57 championship, right?
I saw it. I saw it, and I wasn't tiny.
All right, so
he was an old man at that point.
So, Brian, let's go back to you and start again. The Michigan defense, what were you encouraged by? What did you think needs to be improved, if anything?
Well, considering you got 2 starters out in the secondary, I thought their play was excellent. I mean, they got some fades thrown at them, and Barry had a breakup. Wallace almost had an incredible interception. You know, they couldn't really pick on Keyshawn Harris, and I know that that's like, you know, it's just ECU. But in terms of what was I worried about? Well, I was worried about guys running free in the secondary, and that didn't really happen. You know, the front seven, I mean, any attempt to run the ball was just immediately crushed. The rotation was really interesting because it looks like they think they got 5 guys at both defensive end and defensive tackle. And then Houseman shows up, and he's like immediately like, okay, that guy can play. So I thought it was interesting that they were rotating him through both linebacker spots, and the other guys were just playing middle or weak.
Yeah, it looks to me like this. I mean, I'll let Seth speak to this. He's the one who's charted the defense, but it seemed to me that the linebacking play right now is about as good as it's been in a long, long time. I mean, I thought all 3 of those guys played really well, and the defensive tackles were great. But go ahead, Seth. This is your
yeah. I was going to say I charted something I never charted before. A couple of things I'd never charted before when I've been doing defense. One is Junior Colson didn't make any mistakes, not one. And I mean, that was his thing last year. This guy is a playmaker. He recklessly throws himself at the line sometimes, and it's gorgeous, right? He's a big guy. He moves people around. He got underneath the tackle and just shoved him off and made the tackle in this game. And that's the thing that Junior Colson can do. He can do that athletically. He can do that with size and strength. But like, he would make mistakes. He made no mistakes in this game. One game, not going to say anything more about it, but he only made one mistake. No mistakes in this game. Houseman, yeah, that guy's going to be a dude. Like, you just see it. There were a couple times where he just like zoomed in and got somebody when the cornerback was setting an edge. Cornerbacks are setting pretty good edges in this game too. And another thing I saw in this game that I have not charted and I've been on about forever, the cornerback switched. So they tried to run a run route. That was on the Sab when they tried to throw the fade on Sab. Their first look, what they thought, because they called they switched their offense, right? They called an audible, and they thought they saw man coverage, and they thought they were going to get a rub. And Keyshawn Harris and Mike Samerstill switched on those guys. They weren't switching before this year. They never switched with DJ Turner. And now that that's in the toolbox, and obviously, those are two older guys on the team, but Josh Wallace is another older guy. If that's in the toolbox and Will Johnson can do it too, that was like the only hole that they had. That was what teams would run on us in 3rd and short last year.
So, an interesting note on that. It wasn't a toolkit, but remember last year, Mikey was a first-year DB. Mm-hmm. So, play that sticks out to me, they got rubbed against Rutgers, and Will was the other corner. And I said, well, Will, what happened on this play? He said, hey, that was Mikey's fault. That was Mikey. He said that was Mikey's fault, man. He said, we're supposed to trade on that, and they didn't. And so he's, that was a lesson learned. That was a little late in the season. And remember, again, Mikey's a first-year guy. Well, now Mikey is a veteran in the game. I was impressed that Keyshawn Harris in his first big-time action was ready for that, right? So, yeah, well-coached guys who've been in this system, guys who can think on their feet. It was a great reflection on the coaching and on the maturity of the players on the field.
Yeah, and Josh Wallace was looking really smart out there too. They ran a trap coverage to destroy some RPO, to destroy the RPO that they ran the same RPO I think 5 times in this game. Like ECU was just gonna do their thing, but Michigan finally just said okay, enough, and they ran that trap coverage, and Wallace played it perfectly. And you could tell he's been coached by Don Brown because that's how Don Brown teaches it. But that was just so refreshing. Like we were worried about Morian Walker coming into the season, and is that going to be our cornerback? I feel more comfortable after this game about Josh Wallace than probably anybody else I saw.
Yeah, and the rumor is that Will Johnson and Rod Moore are practicing this week, so I suspect we're going to see them back, if not this week, next week. So one of the concerns was depth at corner, and I think that's a bit of less of a concern now. I also think Keon Saab had a pretty good game, and I think you charted him well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was happy for Keon. Yeah. You guys remember, a lot of folks talking about Keon needs to be a linebacker. Keon needs to be a linebacker. And so he said he dropped about 10 pounds in the offseason, felt quicker, felt faster. And he was going to play no matter what, but his role in this game was certainly elevated. And he made 2 plays, where the ball is in the air, it gets to the receiver. He didn't panic in either instance and made a play on the football. I thought Keon acquitted himself really well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, he's a guy who you see popping up, first-time player. That fade, he didn't get his head around, but he played it very well. He got his arms between the arms of the offensive player at the right time. And that's something that, as he grows as a player, he might try to look for an interception there. But if we're talking about redshirt freshman first start, I'm going to take that all day. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I was pleased with him, and that's going to be important because I don't think Rod Moore is going to be here next year.
I don't either. I don't either. I think, Rod. I think Rod's going to have a huge season, and that's his mindset heading into the year. I'm going to the NFL. So, yes, I agree with you on that, Brian. It's a very, very positive sign. Here's a question that kept coming up in some of our streams this week, and I said, okay, Keon looked good. I think he looked good as a safety, but let's not get carried away because fans get excited and they say, well, if you got 5 good DBs, just play Keon at corner. It's like, okay, let's stop. No. That's not. Okay, let me not answer the question for you guys. What do you think about that idea that fans have been bringing up this week?
Unlikely.
No, he's
not. Wait, Keon Sabb at corner?
No. All right, so one of the great plays he made in this game was he ends up in man coverage on a flag route where the receiver's cutting outside, and there's nowhere else to put that ball. That quarterback threw a beautiful pass under duress. I give him credit for that throw, and Sabb he's 3 yards off when that ball is thrown, and that is not where you want your guy to be. If that's a cornerback and you don't have a lot of space, that's not a good spot to be. He made up that ground and knocked the ball out at the end. They had to replay it and make sure that and see it, but he did get to the ball and he did knock it out at the end. So he's a playmaker, but he's not the just athlete who can do that, right? That's if you want to see somebody who we saw Saturday and is going to probably be starting by the end of the year, I'm going with Jair Hill. Because there were some things that he showed. He is super quick. He's not big, right? He got a hold of the guy, and then it was just a whole lot of pulling and tugging to make sure that guy wasn't going any further because he's not big. But man, can he move? There's nobody else on the team who can move like him. So once he gets it, and once he gets a little more size, that is going to be a player.
We got to talk about Mikey Sainristil, though, guys. I talked about him last year in a bad play. It's like he made so many positive plays last year, and in this game, I thought that dude he was big time, just like glue. The only time they got open, it was a offensive pass interference. That dude is just on another level, and a true playmaker for Michigan from the beginning of the year, and I think that's just going to be the case throughout the year. Let's start with you, Craig, because we haven't heard from you.
Well, I maybe I'm wrong. He's not big, but I think he's an NFL player.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think he's going to get drafted this year, and it's pretty remarkable for a guy to go from receiver to defensive back pretty seamlessly. Now, he did play defensive back in high school, as I recall, also, but that's been a pretty seamless transition for him. You could see his wide receiver skills on the interception, which wasn't the easiest catch, and I mean, he's going to be playing. He's going to be playing on Sundays. I have almost no doubt about that.
And I don't think he would have if he stayed a receiver. Making a great decision.
Well, Virginia Tech wanted him at cornerback back when Virginia Tech knew what they were looking at. One thing I noticed about Sainristil in this game, I didn't even write him up. He's already gotten to the point where he's so good it's boring. But he shows up in a lot of other guys' highlights. So you talk about Houseman just nailing a dude, right? The reason why he was able to line that up is Sainristil takes his receiver and throws him all the way back to the hash mark and just cuts the amount of running space that play is supposed to have. That was on a reverse. He cuts that amount of space in half, right? There's another one where he just they had a backwards pass that gets kind of a run, whatever, but he sets up on the edge and is just battling with that receiver, and he's getting held and yanked and everything like that. And then Barrett actually misses the tackle out there. McGregor misses the tackle out there. Sainristil comes off his guy and makes the tackle. And these are little plays that people don't notice very much, but he's just been in perfect position on these run plays. And he's not a big guy, but I mean, I just talked about him nailing a tight end, nailing a 6'2", 220 receiver. Those are big players that he's going against, and he just outmuscled them.
How about
he's also sort of the emotional leader, it seems to me, as much as anyone on this team. I mean, and that's meaningful. It's meaningful in the NFL. I mean, it's meaningful at Michigan. It's certainly meaningful in the NFL.
Yeah, captain for a reason. But you mentioned he's not a big guy. Brian, Kenneth Grant's a big guy, and he can move. I mean, I expected to feel him in a run game, but as a pass rusher, you felt him in this contest.
Yeah, I mean, he had that stunt that resulted in the Sainristil pick, and I was watching it and I'm like, who is that? And then it was 78, and I was like, no, that's not. So, but that was his reputation as a recruit. So the people who were high on him were really high on him because they were like, I don't understand how this guy moves like he does at his size. And that was probably 30 pounds ago. He lost 20 in the phone books, and I'm sure he was slimming down over the later period of his high school career. So, I think he's still probably a year away from being consistent, but as a guy who you can bring in for a third to 40% of the snaps, I think he could be a guy who really makes a difference. I mean, the thing about this line is they were, it was 3 plays on, and then we're gonna have a line change. And I don't think that's something that is just we're just playing ECU. I think you're gonna see maybe a little bit more favoritism towards the starters against Big Ten teams, but I think they can keep these guys fresh the whole season because they really have 1.5 starting defensive lines here, and Grant's a big part of that.
Yeah, so much that we can get to in the college football landscape. We only have a few minutes left, so I'll spend that time on Ohio State. Guys, I mean, we talked a little bit about it in the break. Indiana had the worst defense in the league last year. I know every year is different, but the talent disparity was so great that it was reasonable to expect Ohio State to be able to go up and down the field on the Hoosiers, and they weren't able to. It was striking to me how docile their offense looked in that game, Brian.
Yeah, so two things is that their left tackle is a San Diego State transfer, and he did not look up to their standards. And they went under center a lot. I think one of their themes of the offseason is we got to get tougher. And so what they're doing is that they're getting under center and they're running a lot and they're running zone stretch to the boundary, which Ross Fulton, who's an Ohio State fan, who's really good about this stuff, despises. And they're not getting off blocks and they're not getting the linebackers. That middle linebacker from Indiana might be a player, but he was shooting into the backfield. I don't think I've seen linebackers in the backfield like that over the course of an entire year for Michigan over the past few years. And he was in the backfield probably 5 or 6 times. So they got major communication issues. They got major philosophy issues. And then Kyle McCord, well, he doesn't look like he's going to be CJ Stroud. And Stroud had a rough first start too. And he's going up against a Big Ten defense that I do think will be better than they were last year. But yeah, they've had this incredible run at quarterback. And I just don't think it's going to continue this year, particularly with their issues on the offensive line. I mean, Igbuka and Marvin Harrison had a total of 34 receiving yards in this game against Indiana. So, yikes.
How does Marvin Harrison have 2 receptions? I just
He got hurt in that game for a little bit.
Not that I'm wishing that they make Marvin Harrison look like Marvin Harrison. I'm just surprised that neither he nor Igbuka went off in this contest.
You put a guy on top of him, right?
I mean, but they were shutting down the run game pretty well. Like, I don't think that they really doubled up. I think that McCord had issues kind of finding him. They did hit Stover quite a bit for some good gains. So, maybe it's just taking what the defense gives you. But I mean, Indiana has often been able to shut down good running games because they're so aggressive with those trap corners. But it's never mattered when they play Ohio State because they just get nuked in the air and put up 23 and kind of like sludge it out against I mean, their hope is week 1 to week 2 now, right? That whatever kinks that they showed in week 1 are just going to evaporate because teams do get a lot better after they actually hit the ground. But if they remain at that talent level, I had a hot take for a season preview podcast that Ohio State was going to be playing in the Outback Bowl.
I love that hot take.
Given how they were all over the backfield, Indiana. Given how the quarterback battle clearly was still, quote, a battle, and Devin Brown is the more mobile of the two, and you're trying to be more physical and run the football. Why did Devin Brown not get more run in this game? That was another thing that was confusing.
It was too close, and he's a turnover machine. That's my guess. Like,
yeah,
he's younger, and it's clear that they weren't really totally happy with McCord, but they can't put Devin Brown in the game because he's just going to throw it into a linebacker's chest. That's my assumption.
Yeah, Ohio State's going to get better this week because they play Youngstown State. We'll see what happens on the road against Notre Dame. I mean, right now you'd have to say it's a reasonable chance they're going to lose to Notre Dame. And
I want to see what happens against Notre Dame's offensive line.
Yeah,
because that was the other thing that they're supposed to be fixing, and you can't tell against Indiana. You're not going to tell against YSU, but you'll tell. Notre Dame is the only other team other than Georgia that has an offensive line like Michigan's.
Well, they have 2 very good tackles, and their interior is a little bit patched together in Notre Dame. So Ohio State has a number of defensive tackles who look like they might be able to make a leap, particularly, I think, Tyreek Williams or Hill. I forget his last name, Tyreek. It just goes by his first name now because I made him. So, yeah, I mean, I think their defense has the potential to improve if they really get someone making a leap on that defensive line. But You know, JTT last year had a 9% pass rush win rate, which is worse than Taylor Upshaw. And Sawyer really hasn't produced either. So you have all this talent on the defensive line. They make a step forward, they can really patch up a bunch of holes. If they don't, I think you're looking at Larry Johnson being a problem.
Hey, man. And so that's a great segue on the way out. This is why in the summer, to get a little recruiting in, I said, look, whether it's Michigan State guys and Nick Marsh or the Ohio State guys that they lost, you keep recruiting those guys. Because there was a good chance Michigan State was going to suck, and it's really looking like that prediction is going to be true. And Ohio State, if they don't have a playoff season, if they go down to Michigan again, someone's getting fired. And I doubt it's going to be Ryan Day. And it's probably going to be a sacrificial lamb on defense.
It's going to be Ryan Day.
You think so?
They lose to Michigan.
Just
no.
Given like the pulse of the Ohio State fan base that I sort of track on Twitter.
Yeah.
If they lose to Michigan this year, it will be all out revolt if it's Ryan Day.
This is a great hot take. My hot take is Urban Meyer coaches Ohio State in 2024.
We'll pick it up next week. Another great show, guys. Thanks a lot. We'll see you next time here on the